Paltrocast.
So many things to ask both of you, and I'll first kick it off with Toby. What was your first memory of King Crimson? Do you remember the first time you heard the band?
I think my first memory of King Crimson might be being in the rehearsal space with Robert Fripp, Jeremy Stacey, and Bill Rieflin, and quietly doing a bit of filming in the corner, and then getting a look from the manager, and then the manager taking me outside and saying, "Robert's getting a bit twitchy with the filming." And I think that might have actually been the first time I heard King Crimson music at that point, with the exception of, I mean, of course, I probably heard In the Corpse of Crimson King and Schizoid Man at a distance, but I'm not sure I've got quite idiosyncratic and esoteric music tastes, and I tend to also listen to a lot of dance music. So I really wasn't exposed to King Crimson because prog, even though it definitely draws a line between psychedelia and punk, particularly with Red, if you think about Red, for me, I'd never explored that link between the two. And so a lot of it came as a bit of a shock to me, a very pleasant one, but I was really, as Robert described it in the past, innocent of King Crimson. So I came to it much more, which I think was useful initially, much more sort of interested in the ideas than I was in the music. That's not to say I wasn't interested in the music, but the ideas initially what I focused on, because I really had no understanding of the band's back catalogue.
Right. Not all of us are born with the prog gene. Prog rock has been a thing for me in the past few years. I went from punk to prog, and I'm not ashamed to say it was Level 42 that got me over the hump for liking songs that go for more than 4 minutes long. But I see Tony slapping right there. Are you? Yeah. What happens when you and Mark King are in the same room together?
Mark just took over my thumb. I can't stop it. My thumb is going. So,
yeah. Yeah. Have you actually been in the same room as Mark at any time?
Yeah, but I can't remember when. We have not played together, and I've co-billed King Crimson. I think co-billed with Level 42. How's that in a German festival? Yeah.
Wow.
Jacko played with Mark with Level 42 for a while as well, didn't he?
Yes, Jacko Jacko's our lead singer. Yeah, played in Level 42.
Small damn world.
He's one of the many bass players I'm a fan of and I admire.
Right. Well, I'm a big fan of your bass playing, Tony. I don't think that the average person realizes they've heard your music in some form because of.
Well, that's okay that they don't realize that. I wouldn't want them to carry that weight around with them. I have played on a lot of records and lucky to have done it and very happy to have done it.
Right. So that's, decades upon decades of success here. Now, did you have any hesitation to becoming less anonymous by being part of a documentary like this?
I didn't. Good. That's a very good question. I didn't think of it in that terms and in that way. I wasn't thrilled about the idea of the documentary because it would be some guy I don't know. This is before I knew Toby, backstage at the dressing room and outside the dressing room. This is before I knew that he'd be there much more than I had expected and in a more intrusive way. And he wouldn't go away.
I'm sorry about that time in the shower.
And he wouldn't go away. And then the tour leg ended. And then the next one, I showed up thinking, and there he was on my way in. He kind of ambushing me as I came off stage, as I went onto stage. Mind you, I'm not just a bass player. I photograph a lot. It's my hobby, and I actually tend to put out books of these. So all my pictures of us going on stage and coming off stage have Toby in the back with this camera. It's a huge camera. And so toss those cameras. Anyway, I really dig him in spite of that. And I'm very thrilled about the documentary itself, but the idea of it, no, I was not a fan of that. And the implementation of the filming, no, I was not a fan of it. Now that I've seen it, I realize I was a lot friendlier to Toby than Robert was. Robert, who had asked him to do the documentary. I didn't actually slam the door in his face or anything like that.
Right. And besides that job title of photographer, with the photo books and all that, technically an actor too, because of that Paul Simon movie, you got a SAG card.
Very poor actor. Yeah. Yeah. Well, my job was to act as a bass player, but they changed my name. Darn it! I was John, not Tony, and I couldn't do it. I mean, I did it, but it was not
4
not
letters still. That works. But back to Toby here. When you started this documentary, did you know, hey, this is how it's going to end? Or in other words, some people, when they're starting a documentary, they know, okay, this is the story I'm going to tell. And then other documentarians go, we'll shoot, over the next 9 months and see what happens and figure out the story in post.
I hope I haven't given you the impression of any kind of competence like that. No, I just I think with regard to what Tony was saying, that one of the things that I did find genuinely difficult about the process of filming was not the hazing and the bullying and the violence I experienced at the hands of the King Crimson members, nor the sexual harassment, to be honest. But it was the honestly the most uncomfortable dynamic, and to speak seriously, was that I was acutely aware that what these guys were doing mattered. It was important. It was significant. If you're going to spend 4 to 5 hours a day practicing in order to play some music, it really fucking matters. So the last thing you want to do is have somebody who is, as Tony said in an earlier interview, is hoping to get something interesting. Doesn't even really have a mind. My thing is, I used to be like a street photographer, and you learn when you're in that discipline that you learn that it's all about being in the right place at the right time. You have to be. If you're not there, you're not going to get the picture. So with my process, yes, it's just a question of being there, trying to capture particular moments that give the experience of the band for the audience in that way. So you do have to be pretty relentless about it. But I felt this great sense of responsibility and on occasion guilt, because I did not want to get in the way of the music, but I wanted to get close to the music. So it created this tension, not only between me and the members of the band, but also for me, because the last thing I want to do is destroy the thing that I'm there to shoot. But I mean, that's a dilemma of the documentary process anyway.
Yeah, you made an interesting point there when you talk about how much King Crimson rehearses, because the opposite end of a virtuoso band, one of my favorite bands, Van Halen, sound check every day, the singer generally not there, and they have to rehearse it instrumental, and basically Van Halen just goes, well, you have one chance to get it right, let's get it right, and that's that. Whereas
who are we slacking off here? Is it Sammy Hagar?
Both. Allegedly, both of them.
Okay. Well, I can beat that. So one of my favorite bands of all time, The Beat Happening, was so punk rock that they used to swap instruments after every song in case they got too good.
Wow, that sounds like the band Sloan, where you have 4 lead singers that are also songwriters changing every song. So then there's a delay after every song with sound checking. But hey, we're not here to talk about Sloan, Beat Happening, Van Halen. We're talking about you and your great documentary. So in your case, Toby, are we allowed to know what's next from you? Because it's new to us. It's kind of old to you.
Well, it's the film. I mean, the great thing about the reason this film came about is I was talking to Robert in Christmas 2017 about my first film, The Man Whose Mind Exploded, and somebody had sent me an Instagram message, and this is about 4 years after I'd finished the film, and they said, you've got no idea who I am, but me and some friends of mine have a sort of sex cult in Oakland based on the notion of cosmic fuck, and we have tattooed ourselves with a version of that phrase, because Draco, the hero of my first film, has a tattoo that says cosmic fuck. And I was saying this to Robert and his wife Toya, and I was saying one of the things that's just so magnificent about making art is that once you've made it, you sort of lose control over it, and it becomes something entirely different for other people. But then it becomes something else for you as well. So for me, that's sort of that's it's not why I do it, but it's one of the total joys of doing it. Although I forgot what the original question was.
Are we allowed to know which project coming from you is now?
Okay, yes. So
You've called that guy back, and you're going to do that film.
yeah, so I'm going to make
That one.
Well, I mean, the original title for this film was Cosmic Fuck Prog Rock Pond Scum Set to Bum You Out, but I am making a fiction film that is loosely based on what happens if a proper professionally made documentary goes horribly, horribly wrong, and the director, who is evil, as all directors are, realizes that the more things go wrong, the more valuable his footage becomes. So he becomes an active part of the process of it getting more and more horrifying. It's sort of it's influenced in part by a film by Michael Powell called Peeping Tom, which is a very, very dark but extraordinary film about voyeurism.
Dog Bites Man, I think, as well.
Man Bites Dog is one of my favorite films of all time. I absolutely adore that film. You know, so this mixture of, I mean, the King Crimson film is listed on IMDb as documentary, comedy, horror, and those are my preferred genres.
I'm a fan of that too, and I'll give the last word to Tony here. Now, yes, the photo books, yes, the occasional acting, the occasional solo albums, King Crimson. What's the next year or two looking like for you as the clearly most likable person for decades in King Crimson?
Well, I thank you for the unwarranted compliments. I have a lot of touring coming up. I just came back from a tour with Stickman, and I'm about to embark on a couple other tours in December and in January, and a different one in February. And then in March, I'll finish up my long overdue solo album for release next September. That solo album will be called Bringing It Down to the Bass, because it focuses on the bass, I think is the word. And
yeah,
another tour that I can't talk about yet next September, because it isn't definite, and nothing looks dumber than reading that you talked about a tour and it didn't happen. No, one thing looks dumber, talking about an album release and it didn't happen. Oops, I did talk about the album release. Anyway, that's my plans, and thank you for asking.
I just think it's really exciting that King Crimson are getting back on the road, Tony.
Well, what you have to do in the future, Tony, is call one of your solo albums Level 43 to show you're one level above.
Absolutely.
But in the meantime, thank you to you both for creating great art that pushes minds and expectations forward, and really looking forward to both of your future projects. But congrats on this new doc.
Thank you so much.
Paltrocast.